Ladies and gentlemen, boys and ghouls, all of our non-binary friends, and everyone on the spectrum and in between, my name is Ken Stacknick, and this is The Shutter Show. This is my co-host.
I am David Marlowe, and today we are watching
The Love Witch. She will love you to death. David, how you doing today?
I am doing just lovely. The taglines for all of our movies are just the best.
Oh, absolutely. Well, especially when you say when they in the trailer voice.
You know, you don't get that with a drama.
This is true.
You like I guess if you were to give like a horror movie tagline to Saving Private Ryan, what would you?
Saving Private Ryan. He finds Ryan. Like, it doesn't quite, Sophie's Choice. But boy, that choice sucks. I don't like... I mean, it's honest, but I don't know how good that works on a poster.
Boys cry. Wiping the mouth is not okay.
Oh, no. That's... okay. Wow. All right. So, David. David, what movie are we talking about today?
We are talking about a real interesting treat called The Love Witch.
2016.
2016. You would not think it looking at it.
No, absolutely not. No. The work here of director Anna Biller and David Mullen is really something else when it comes to capturing the tone and the time period of the I would say the 50s and the 60s are the two time periods that this movie channels the most. And it does it in every way, from the production design, from the lighting, to the use of filters, the camera angles. Everything about this movie absolutely emulates the campy horror classics of that period. I think specifically of the work of, like, say, Mario Bava, Douglas Sirk, and even John Waters and Roger Corman are some of the people who I think, at least for me, that Anna is really channeling. That's what this movie really reminds me of.
I think definitely John Waters, if you're looking at the head of the cult.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar energy.
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's a real... this is one of the few movies I can think of that captures the camp aesthetic without it being corny, but in a bad way. Most of the time when you are trying to create camp, you just end up creating this really stilted reality. Mm-hmm. And I think Roger Ebert once said that camp can't be made, it can only be found. And I would say most of the time, yeah, Raj, but Anna Biller kind of knocked this out of the camp park, like in the fact that she meant it. I would
almost say that that's true, but the thing is, I don't necessarily know how much of this was on purpose.
Well, I think it's all on purpose.
Well, that's the thing. It doesn't necessarily, and if it is all on purpose, then that would be very impressive, because with this is going to be one of the first films of this podcast series where Ken and I have very differing opinions of the film.
Yeah.
Not necessarily 100% negative, but what Ken takes away from this one is not necessarily something that I took from it in my first or even second viewing.
It's definitely a movie that builds on you through subsequent viewings, and it teaches you how to watch it. And
you got to have your filmmaker hat on for this.
Oh, for sure. This movie is an auteur. Anna Biller is an auteur with a capital A. And for anyone out there looking to throw shade, let me explain to you that Anna Biller on this movie wrote, directed, produced, production designed, costume designed, composed, and edited this movie. The only thing she didn't do was cater it and star in it. And, I mean, David Mullen, who's the cinematographer for this, called Anna a complete filmmaker, and I cannot think of someone more than maybe like a Steven Soderbergh as someone who, like, this movie is them. They did everything in it. They built all this stuff. This is their vision. She weaved the carpet. Like that pentagram carpet that's in the movie, she weaved that herself. It took like 6 months.
How long was she actually working on this film?
I want to say 2 to 3 years that she was like slowly building up the idea, writing the screenplay, finding the props, finding the locations, because like this is also a movie that is not... This movie was not shot like on a stage and call it a day. This movie was shot in Eureka. This movie was shot in Topanga Canyon, Laurel Canyon. It was shot in Griffith Park. It was shot in Arcadia, Van Nuys, Pasadena. Pretty much like they went wherever they needed to find the right locations, the right visual design, the right aesthetic for a movie that captures a time and a place like few other modern movies that I can describe. Now,
the house where the main character played Elaine, played by Samantha Robinson.
Yes.
The house where she has her apartment. Where is that house? Because that house looks unbelievably familiar, and I feel like I've actually acted in something that was shot there.
Okay, so like her apartment is a stage that's here in LA.
Yeah.
And then
but the exterior of the house,
I believe, is up in Eureka.
Okay, and that might be the same house because and I can't, once again, I got...
It's an historic house from what I understand.
It is.
I didn't write down the name, but yes.
Because I remember shooting in a house that, if anything, looked very similar, that same Gothic architecture style as this house. And inside is... all sorts of weird witchy shit, which is why I'm surprised that they didn't shoot the interior of that house. Whether or not they had the rights to be in that house, or whether they just kind of snuck on and guerrilla filmed in the exterior, which totally makes sense.
I have a feeling that has more to do with being able to control and paint the interior walls and such, because something about this movie, I think in particular, that is very important is nothing in this movie is on accident. Everything is designed. Every piece of makeup, every costume piece, every angle, every location, every piece of artwork on the wall, every book. Nothing in this movie happened by chance. Much like when you're making Lord of the Rings. You can't just go to IKEA and buy some spoons. Even if they're like wooden spoons, like they're not...
Like that looks factory made.
Yes, it doesn't look like... Some hobbits made that shit, so you have to make everything from scratch. Mm-hmm. And same thing with the Love Witch, in the fact that like you can't just have some IKEA-ass piece of furniture. Like it has to be this weird, interesting, witchy. Like one of the things that one of my witch friends praised about this movie is the aesthetic. Like this movie has the look that every witch either thinks she has or desperately wants to have.
It's because and I suppose before we really dive into this, should I give sort of a non-spoiler synopsis, even though this is necessarily like the kind of movie that you spoil?
Yes, no, absolutely. And one of the things I want to say to our audience is one of the things that we're realizing, and if you disagree with us here, if you don't think this is particularly right, please reach out to us on our socials. Pretty much everything is at Shutter Show, except for our Instagram, which is Shutter_show. Mm-hmm. But reach out to us and let us know what you're thinking. But how we're kind of feeling is that our job is to talk to you about a movie that you've seen before, to give you some insight, or if you're really not sure about the movie, to give you a reason to go see that movie. So we're going to be pretty much from the top talking about spoilers. And the idea is at the end of each week, we're going to give you a movie that over the next week we think that you should watch, that we think that you think will be interesting. And then when you meet up with us over the weekends and we talk about the movie, we can talk about the movie from a place where we've all seen it and move forward from there, rather than trying to make a show that specifically tries to dance around the spoilers of what's happening. I think if you want to skip the spoilers, then go ahead and skip the episode till you've seen it, or use our episode as an opportunity to find out a reason to watch a movie that you wouldn't normally watch. But I think going forward, we're going to be a pretty spoilerific show. So if that's something that you're worried about, go check out the movie and check back.
Yeah, the show is very much all about finding the diamonds in the rough that nobody really is, not necessarily like that very few people are aware of, including myself. There's once again, all of these movies can be found in the library of Shudder, which has a very impressive library. So we are not sponsored by Shudder in any way. However, if Shudder wants to add us with a sponsorship, I wouldn't argue against it. But,
but like we are a show that is trying to tell you what's good, why you should watch something, and try to just point out the titles that you wouldn't maybe normally get to right away because maybe they're
maybe
a little older than you used to.
Maybe this one time watch a movie for something other than the sake of just watching a movie.
Absolutely,
have an experience. So I guess I'll just jump into like my real quick non-spoiler synopsis of this film.
100%.
Okay, so this can be summed up for me in 2 sentences of: a self-proclaimed witch on the run moves to a new town looking for love. Will she find it before the law finds her?
It's pretty good.
Thanks. Took me a whole weekend to come up.
There we go. Now, one other thing to say about this movie, in case you are kind of on the edge trying to figure out, is this the movie that I'm going to watch? Something that someone who means a lot to me, David Fincher, said this is one of the weirdest, fucking coolest movies that he's seen in ages. And I could not agree with him more. It is... The Love Witch is like something you've never seen before, but at the same time, it still has some familiar elements to it. Anna Biller said that she really wanted to bring back female glamour and that she really wanted to create an almost suffocatingly feminine film that brought back the classic Hollywood glamour of the 50s and 60s and that was really about the tyranny of the male fantasy. And I think that's a really interesting insight into what I think and it was going for, and something that I think both David and I want to say up top is, hi, we are 2 men. We are 2 cis men. We are 2 white cis men on top of everything else. We are so sorry. And we wanted to say that, like, we understand that our particular opinions on this particular topic might not be the most relevant, in which case we want to suggest that you find some female filmmakers and some female critics out there who maybe have found some stuff on The Love Witch to say more. But we both think that we have some interesting opinions on it. And at least for me in particular, I think this is a movie that everybody should see, even if it's a movie that just causes you to sit down and argue with some of your more male-oriented friends.
Yes. And it's, kind of jumping or piggybacking off of what you were saying. Yeah, at the same time, if you are a woman in film or a woman interested in film, like, we 100% welcome any kind of critiques or suggestions or even just opinions about the film or opinions on our opinions. I love that stuff. And once again, we are going to try to avoid very misogynistic territory in terms of our opinion. Yeah, but feel free to correct us if there's something that maybe
we've missed.
We've missed. Because I will be the first to say that I am wrong in many things, and I really appreciate it when people correct me when I'm wrong. So
now, David, let me ask. So, from watching the trailer, what did you expect, and what do you feel like you got?
Well, I watched the trailer not realizing that this was directed by a woman.
Okay.
I straight up thought this was going to be a sexploitation film.
Okay.
And throughout watching it, and I really didn't look up who the director was until halfway through. And then I started questioning whether it was sexploitation. However, and I will say, and I've done a little bit of research after watching this film, and the director has been very frustrated that a lot of reviewers and a lot of critics have labeled her film as sexploitation. I don't remember what the term that she coined it as was, but she said it is not sexploitation. And this is sort of where my opinion of the film tends to differ from Ken's, because I do think despite what she might have been going for, I do think it does come off quite a bit as campy sexploitation or an homage or nod to sexploitation.
See, I would agree with you if there was like nudity in the movie. Like there is.
Oh, there's a lot of nudity,
but not really. Like not in the.
There's some spackled old man dick in this too.
There's some spackled old man dick for sure. But in
sacrificial titties?
Yes, there's some sacrificial titties, but also at the same time, they're much more implied titties, I would argue. Like they're like it's not all about nipples, and it's not all about grinding crotches, and it's not all about. It's much like this movie to me is much more about burlesque than it is about striptease. It's the implication of nudity. Almost every time Samantha Robinson is topless, her hair is over her breasts.
Yeah.
There are moments when, yes, things brush to the side, and yes, for a moment.
Or when there was a ceremony, there's a full-on naked woman
100%.
with breasts fully bare.
But, like, also it's not sexualized. Ever. Like, there's no, like, the sex scenes are very...
The sex scenes are very awkward.
Well, they're very awkward. They're not sexy. They're not full of nudity. They're not... hot.
No. And I would also argue that the scenes where she is seducing her men come off. It is more of a statement on the man than it is on the woman, and his reaction to her undressing in front of him.
She is always in control. There's no scene in this movie
she is 100%,
where she is like the only time she's not in control is when the neighbor at the end of the movie puts on her wig and attacks her. That's pretty much the only time when Elaine
she's not in control.
Is not in total and complete
control.
I
would also argue the bar, where they're trying to burn the witch.
Okay, yes.
Which they weren't so much saying burn the witch as much as they were being like, oh, let's rape the witch. That was
more of a let's punish the woman for being sexual, and I think that's like that ultimately. Yeah. I think is what this movie really is about. And again, we're sorry, we're two white cis men talking about feminine stuff, but trying to channel my inner lady as best I can and understanding what's happening to me. This movie is about the problem of trying to play by the rules of the patriarchy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and how while that might give you power in the moment, it doesn't give you any power or satisfaction in the long run itself. At best, you end up with a man who doesn't know how to deal with a truly confident woman. And at worst, it ends up with you just using your sexuality as the one thing of value in society. And feminism is not that. Feminism is about the choice to choose what you want to do yourself, as opposed to...
I would also argue that going along with the patriarchy doesn't necessarily buy you safety either.
Yes, no, absolutely. It only buys you temporarily safety. It's very much kind of similar to like an Uncle Tom's Cabin kind of a thing of like, yes, you can temporarily gain some safety by playing by the rules and by living up to what society says that you should do, what your role should be. But you're ultimately not really going to make any headway because ultimately you're playing the rules by a completely rigged game.
I think...
Yeah, it's... and I think that's one of the things that makes The Love Witch in particular hard to process for a lot of people, because it's a movie that's very frank and upfront about how unfair the system of patriarchy is. Mm-hmm. But at the same time displays what would either be a very flawed protagonist or very sympathetic villain who is stuck in the situation of playing by the rules and thinking that as a result they might win. And it's one of those things that, like, no, if you're playing the game, you're losing.
I think when I went into this movie, based completely on the trailer, sort of coming back to that first question you were asking, is that the marketing on it like it made me expect a sexploitation film. So when everything was going on, I was very confused. I was very confused on what was happening with these men.
Yes.
Because it's the dialogue, I will say, is very simplistic.
Yes.
It's very, I would almost say, film school-esque.
It's very direct.
In the way that, very direct, I think is a better way to put it. I've seen a lot of dialogue very similar that I've kind of made me cringe a little bit. But the way that it handles like when I was watching this the first time and she was actually seducing these men and pretty much in a way poisoning them with emotion, I did not understand that that's what was happening. I thought she's like, okay, there's a spell that she's like some kind of love spell. I thought it was as simple as that. She's putting them in a spell that makes them fall in love with her. Like, oh no, but then when you look at it, she's putting them in a spell that completely opens the men up to the full breadth of their emotions, which for most men is not something that they are or we are comfortable with a lot of the times. Is the idea of like, if you were really to see all of the emotions that a man was having, you would be like, oh fuck, oh shit, there's a lot of untapped issues here.
So, listen to the commentary. Anna Biller talks about how the idea for this really germinated from reading self-help books, particularly ones from the 60s, 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And talking about how most of the advice that they gave you was essentially don't overlove your man. Kind of give him space. Mm-hmm. Let him be his own independent creature.
Yeah.
And like love him, but love him for him. And don't like overly invest yourself in him. And that's all super good advice.
Which is sort of the advice that Elaine is preaching.
Yes, and I think the problem with that is that it's all from it's doing what's supposed to be right, but through the lens of what's supposed to be good for the man. Because in every one of these cases, she does not smother a single man in this movie with emotion. There's not a single moment that I can think of where she
jumps to marriage pretty quick, though.
I mean, for the 60s, I guess.
Fair.
But, like, she never gives you that emotional freak out that most people are talking about when they're like, oh, we got a stage 5 clinger here. When, like, they're worried about, like, her emotional status. No, she's about what every male fantasy wants. Is she's like, yeah, no, let's do this. No, cool, whoever you are. Whoever you want to be. And then he's like, no, but you don't understand. I need to be whoever I need to be for you. Because, like, oh my God, you gave me all this sex and you're so independent. You're so, oh man, you
cooked me steak.
Yeah, you cooked me steak. You gave me all this wonderful stuff. What am I supposed to be for you? I don't know who I am.
Yeah. Well, I think also, and this is where, like, I'm going to compliment the film in the sense that I think she also I think she also really tackles well the subject of what happens when women are conflicted when they get the thing that they think that they want, which is a man who's completely 100% open with his emotions. Like how certain women have expectations with what that looks like or what that means, but then when a man really opens up, it's not necessarily what she was looking for or what she wants, and it kind of contradicts what she was saying. Well,
I think it's both that she doesn't get what she wants in this person who's completely open and honest and emotional, and then at the same time he doesn't get what he wants because, like, he doesn't actually want this, like, detached Madonna horror character who's like, yeah, no, we can be physical, but also, like, you're an independent person. I let you go off and do what you need to do.
He wants you around.
No, he wants to.
He wants to spend time with
you. He wants to, or possess her owner, or be owned by her.
She rocks his world, and she goes out and sleeps on the couch, and the whole night he's he's screaming for her.
Yeah, if I can't have you, at least let me simp for you. Seems to be very much the kind of, like, and, like, neither of those things are super healthy, and I think that's again, that's what makes to me what makes The Love Witch so interesting, because it's a movie about both getting what you want and how like what we say what we want is not actually what we want. Like a lot of men watch pornography. Most men watch pornography.
Yeah.
But if you went out to a bar and 30 seconds after meeting a girl, she's like, "You want me to go to the bathroom and suck your cock?" You'd be like, I think some men absolutely would be like, "This is the greatest moment that ever happened to me." And I think a lot
They would
of
also
us
be like, "This doesn't ever happen to me."
Well, yes,
This
and I
is-
think a
'cause
lot
it's
of
not
people
normal.
would
That
be
doesn't. That's not how it goes.
and also like, do you think that girl is healthy? Girls who are just like offering to suck people off in bars after 30 seconds? Like, if it's her choice, fine. Would never kink shame anybody for it. But at the same time, I gotta assume, no. And like, you have to worry about like diseases and consequences. And like, yes, in a porn, like, yeah, it just happens and yeah, it's great. Where like, you know, like it's, you know, at the same time, it's, I was once told that like, you know, Ken, if you're going to go out and try and meet women at bars, you need to have more mystery. You can't just put everything out there. And I was like, what do you want me to wear, a cape? Is that what this is about? What do you mean mystery?
I mean, personally, Ken, I would love to see you in a cape. I think you look very dashing.
So I'm just not supposed to be honest with people? Like, because to me that's, can't we just be honest? Like, if I feel a certain way, and that's going to be a problem, I should probably bring it up ahead of time, right? Because
Like,
otherwise...
How do you think this film fares in a world of online dating and the idea of love being... or the idea of sex being not necessarily immediate, but something that almost seems like you can look on the internet for?
This movie seems to me... seems like you met the perfect girl on Tumblr, and then you were super freaked out when, after knowing her for a while, it turns out that all the not fun, realistic stuff that goes with this person goes with this person. There's all the baggage that goes with just what a normal person is and the problems that they have. And this movie is about... like this, I think kind of about, was it Don Juan, the Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie, is another movie that I'm thinking about.
The one where he's the sort of the Giro who...
It's like addicted to porn, then like meets Scarlett Johansson and Julianne Moore. Yeah. And it's that
they
thing,
both have unrealistic expectations.
Exactly, and that's kind of like what, like, a friend of mine, my witchy friend Chloe, who described this movie as a movie having the aesthetic that every witch either thinks she has or wishes she had, and I think that's there's a very performative aspect to everything witchy that goes on, even until the end when her best friend character ends up putting on her makeup, or is it putting on the makeup and putting on the wig and attacking her, and they have this whole fight. There's this whole putting on an act, putting on airs, putting on a performance, trying to be the kind of woman that the patriarchy wants you to be. You
want to feel, because and that was what I was gathering from Trish as the movie went on. She became more and more envious of Elaine, and so she after a while coming to realize that her life ain't going so hot right now. It's like, well, maybe I should be more like this person, and then coming to realize that what that person isn't necessarily what she thinks it is.
It's just the performative aspect of it. Like, it's just like she inspires these men to do these things that they normally maybe wouldn't do, but like that's not being able to inspire men to do random acts is not the basis for a long-term relationship. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that's very much a movie about, like, that's very much a thing about control. Just because, like, and that, I think that's a big thing about this is, like, this seems to be a woman who is looking for a relationship, but what she's actually looking for, according to her own rules, is control. And then finding out that control ends up being just as fake as anything else. It's like, it's a guy who goes to a strip club and really believes that the strippers there like him.
No,
dude.
It's
they're paying you money. Like, you're paying them money for them to tell you that they like you. It's subscribing to OnlyFans. There's no shame in that, but like you subscribe to OnlyFans because there's no expectation on the other side of that transaction. You don't have to be better. You don't have to be good. You don't even have to care. You just have to pay X dollars of money a month, and then this person will give you the attention and affection of someone who does care, and that's what you're paying for.
So then would you say that Trish is sort of the opposite of Elaine in the sense that she is more of the reality of what real love is versus Elaine's fantasy?
I would say yes. Like her version of things is it's the monotony of reality. Like in the love story, there's this line where was it Ally McGraw says to Ryan Murphy, "Love means never having to say I'm sorry." No, I've been married. David, you're engaged.
I've said sorry.
Being in love means saying I'm fucking sorry all the goddamn time. Like, being in love and being in a relationship with someone is about the little things. It is about it is about the 1% that you give every day, not the 100% that you can give every now and then. It's about leaving a note for your loved one in their lunchbox, and not about taking them to Cancun once a year.
Yeah.
It's the little things that make a relationship stand by, and I think a lot of The Love Witch is about the things that we tell ourselves that make relationships important that actually don't, that actually just complicate things.
Yeah.
That, like, if you don't spend 3 months of your salary on a ring for your girl, you don't really love her. When, like, dude,
that's a ridiculous concept.
well, yes, and you know, like, diamonds aren't nearly as actually like,
rare
as
yeah.
they talk about, and there's actually a bunch of super screwed up stuff around it. And wouldn't you rather spend that money on, I don't know, like a better car or a nice TV,
down payment on a house for your family,
some nice kitchen knives and pots and pans to make cooking easier? Like, doesn't that seem like a much better financial agreement than just agreeing to give the De Beers company a huge amount of money for a diamond that isn't worth nearly as much money as everyone says it is? Yeah, it's a real. Why are you playing by agreeing to play by their rules? You're automatically going to lose, and I think that's a lot of what The Love Witch is having to say, and I think that's what makes a lot of people who have some interesting wishy-washy feelings on this movie, what makes them take pause, because it says some pretty fucked up stuff. It says some stuff about our society and about our culture and about the sexes that isn't entirely positive, but I would say is definitely honest. Like, yeah, it's not an endorsement of reality, but a very honest portrayal of the world that we live in, where, yes, there are things that you can do as a woman to play into the patriarchy, but that does not lead to equality. That does not lead to a healthy relationship. And in most cases, just leads to an unhealthy one. That leads to unhappiness. And there's not a lot of movies that I think tackle it in the way that The Love Witch does. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's a movie you should check out.
I wish that the marketing had been a little bit more... Or if anything, even like the marketing and the movie, I wish that there had been a little bit more... Because watching it, I didn't realize that that's what it was until it was too late. And I think that was my issue with the movie coming into it, is I didn't necessarily put on the right filmmaker hat. Mm-hmm. You know, I put on, because when I was looking, I was concentrating more on the look of the film, which was obviously very based in 60s filmmaking, with everything, with all the color, like bright colors, everything being like the film quality being very soft, everything down to the costumes. But then every once in a while, it looks like they're making a really shitty film because, you know, you have this 60s appropriate car that the character's driving, and then she parks it across the street from a fucking hybrid. And you're like, oh, I didn't realize there were hybrids in the 60s. Or, like, at one point, her friend Trish literally just takes out a cell phone. And at that point, and then at one point she goes in to make dinner, a steak dinner for the first man that she kills with emotions. And she places a Ralph's groceries bag down. And there's moments like that that very much take you out of it. And I wish I was more aware of what was going on. Because I feel like that's not accidental. I do feel like that is on, like I suspect that is on purpose. But why?
I would say it's a 60s message being applied to a modern day aesthetic.
Okay.
A 60s aesthetic being applied to a modern day message. She is saying, like, in the 60s, the idea was like, girls, play into it. Like, be the Playboy bunny. Be the sex minx that he's always wanted. And then you'll have the power. But the problem is that doesn't really bring you any power. Because that only brings you power.
Wall Street has taught us anything. It's that rarely works.
Yes, exactly. It's that, like, you might meet that alpha man who is a stockbroker who buys you a mansion in the Hamptons and works on Wall Street. And then if you're shocked that that person is cheating on you, you should really look at the archetype of the person that you married, because that dude is going to cheat on you, because look at you are a trophy to him. You are a thing that he keeps in his Hamptons house.
Though I would also argue that The Wolf of Wall Street just as easily passed that message on to you. So the question I have is, why so heavy on the 60s and not nearly as heavy on, or not nearly as balanced with the modern day? I feel like with the amount that the modern day came in, all it did was leave me confused and made it look like they were just making mistakes.
Well, the 60s was when that second wave feminism message was coming out and was new and was something interesting to talk about. And then, unfortunately, because of all of the slow move to conservatism that happened in the 70s, I think we lost a lot of that second wave feminism momentum. And I think the 60s aesthetic, but with the modern day setting, allowed them to bring a modern framing to what is something that a lot of, I think, older feminists and older people today, when they're voting or bringing up gender questions in society, they bring up a lot of these older ideas of like, well, why aren't you just one of the good ones? And the thing to remember is, one of the good ones never fixed anything. One of the good African Americans did not help bring about the civil rights movement. One of the nice feminists did not bring about getting the vote.
Yeah.
One of the nice gays did not bring about ending any of the many laws that discriminate against homosexuals. Like, it's never the polite ones who end up bringing about change. It's the ones who shake the cages and rattle the streets and bring people together and say, we're not going to stand for this anymore. This is ridiculous. We're just asking for basic stuff. And I think this movie is very much a reaction to a woman who's like, okay, well, I'm going to play by your rules. I'm going to be the sex goddess that you want me to be, but I'm going to be detached just in the way that you want me to be. But at the same time, I'm going to be independent, and I'm going to be all these other things that go with that. And then it leaves most of the men in her life as this weird, shrinking, shriveling shell of a man, or it leaves you as this cop who's just like, okay, cool. Well, if you're not going to devote everything to me and you're not going to be a sniveling simp, then I'm just going to ignore you and I'm going to neg you until you love me. And the problem with both of those is it's playing by the rules of the patriarchy. And I think what the movie is saying is both of those things are going to lead you to losing, because neither of those things leaves you with any actual choice other than play by their rules or suffer.
Yeah. So after watching this film, I took a little bit of a deep dive into reviews and analysis on the film itself. And I watched this once again. A lot of the movies that we tend to pick out, my fiance will join me for most of it, if at least half of it. And so I find that with this movie specifically, my fiance did not like it. She was not a fan of it. Did not understand what was going on. But at the same time, too, our mutual friend, she also did not like it. But at the same time, she watched it with another mutual friend of ours who loved it. So it is very divisive.
For sure.
It is a very divisive film, critically, I would say on both sides of the gender spectrum. And so I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, why do you think that is? Or like what is it that you think certain people aren't necessarily getting about that? And maybe, like, what could this filmmaker have done differently? Because she seems very frustrated that people aren't getting it.
I mean, I think a big part of it is the message is complicated and contradictory in the fact that, like, hey, look, here's a way to female empowerment. Look, it doesn't actually work. Like, if you define yourself in terms of someone else, you will never find true independence because you're starting with defining yourself through the lens of someone else. You're not doing it for you. If you are trans, if you are gay, if you are something outside of what society states is the norm, and you try to play by society's rules, at best you're going to be frustrated. And at worst, you're going to be insane. Because the only definition of success is to change who you are at a molecular level. And what this movie is about is it's about failure through success. She gets everything that she wants. She gets the man, but it doesn't lead to happiness because the way that she defines her success is through a failing objective. It is there's no there is no finding happiness in a marriage with someone who sees you as an object, just in the same way that there is no seeing someone halfway when they believe that, like, your gay or trans friends should be dead and you think that they should be just allowed to be alive because they're people.
Yeah.
There's no meeting them in the middle. The only middle is like, well, I guess I let you beat my friends up or something. Like, that's not a compromise.
No, it's the equivalent of being like, I'm going to support this person who thinks that homosexuals shouldn't be allowed to be married, but at the same time you're like, well, I'm friends with them, but at the same time too, I'm going to vote for this person because they support this,
or because they're good on the economy, or whatever.
Yeah, it is the equivalent of still punching that same friend in the face.
Mm-hmm.
But
just feeling bad about it. When
you're like, I'm sorry, but but my taxes.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, that's exactly it. It's punching your gay friend in the face and saying, I'm sorry, but taxes. And, like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but also, like, don't you understand that fundamentally what you're doing is fucked up?
Yeah.
And that's what we should be talking about?
So then I guess why witchcraft?
So one of the things that Anna Biller talks about on the commentary track is that the way that we portray witchcraft is one of the things that also we portray about being ultra feminine. In the way that, like, we talk about how they have telepathy, and then we also talk about how women are empaths, and they have a way of feeling what's actually going on in the room. That's very similar to being able to tell the future or to have some sort of telepathy about what's going on. The way that that women can have almost mind control over somebody. I mean, we've all heard one of our male friends describe one of our other male friends as being whipped. How much? Yeah. How? If you're in Victorian times, how hard is it to translate to that woman has mind control over this dude? A lot of the powers that we give to witches are also things that we end up giving, are powers that we end up attributing to witchcraft. There's a reason, one of my friends, Chloe, one of my friends, mentioned that there's a reason that in every story, witches are out in the middle of the woods. Because, like, whenever they interact with mortals expect more from the witches than they expect from themselves. They expect them to cast these spells. They expect them to tell the future. They expect them to do all these things. And then if they have the audacity to do them, they burn them at the goddamn stake, which is why most witches are just like, no, dude, I'm going to be out in the forest, chilling in my house, and you stay the fuck away from me, because every time you get near me, you try to burn me alive for just doing my witch stuff.
So then would you also say that where the patriarchy comes in with witchcraft is the idea of like the bar, I think, is a really good example. The burlesque bar, like you have all different walks of life with altering opinions there, but there's people who are definitely like, ugh, fucking witches, like fuck these witches. But then they're like, yeah, but they're just kind of doing their own thing. We let them be. We don't really bother them. They don't bother us. But then it seems like the second that they have an excuse to, or the second the patriarchy says you committed a crime based on this, then that protection no longer matters.
It's every one of those dudes watching that woman at the burlesque show, which I'll also point out, there's no nudity in that show. There's a lot of implied this and that. There's a lot of like shaking and moving around and shaking bustles.
Burlesque is not a striptease. I have a lot of friends in the burlesque community.
Yeah, and it's very, very different than showing off your bits and pieces.
No, it is straight up an art form. Mm-hmm. There are so many different types of performances. There's so many it is also a celebration of the body and different body types. Mm-hmm. There's also the variation of boylesque as well. I think burlesque is that path into appreciating the human form and overall celebrating sexuality. But it looks like there's also the patriarchy is welcome, but the patriarchy will do what the patriarchy does.
To me, burlesque in its purest form is the feminine version of sexuality, where it's fun and it's allowed and it's not aggressive. It's not through a male necessarily lens. And it is both sexual, but at the same time it is not raunchy. And then I think you have what you see in stripteases, which is about gyrating and faux and performative sex, and it's about nipples and seeing specific body parts in specific ways. And what I think the Love Witch gets right, it celebrates. The Love Witch isn't shaming female sexuality in any way, shape, or form. I think what it's saying is that you shouldn't define your female sexuality in terms of what men want. If you want to perform, if you want to put on this makeup, if you want to put on these outfits, if you want to put on the garters, if you want to put on the dress, do it for you. And if they like it, cool. But don't do it for them. Because then all you're doing is you're defining your success through their satisfaction, and that is always going to create a situation where the performer is more likely to be unhappy. At least that's my guess, or at least that's my reading.
And I guess okay, and so I think moving on to I'm going to sort of ask you the question that is the equivalent of the fly on Mike Pence's head during the debate.
Okay.
And that is the tampon piss mason jar bit. Could you please, for the love of all that is holy, explain that to me? Because I don't get it.
Okay. So
and I don't know if I'm being offensive and not getting it. I just don't.
To me, that is dealing with the complicated issue when it becomes between men and women of both men being obsessed with and worshiping the sexual being, object, energy, femininity that women have, and at the same time once a month being terrified of the fact that they bleed, and that they're both obsessed with this thing that is natural and part of humanity, and the fact that, let's face it, every one of us have parents who fucked. You know why? Because we're here. That's just the thing. Every one of us, every one of you here who's listening, your parents had sex. Yup. Yup. Yeah, that happened.
Ken!
Because we're all here.
The fuck?
I mean, I guess if you're adopted, there's a slim chance that your parents have not. However...
Somebody fucked.
Yeah, somebody fucked. For sure. That is just something that
Ken, you're blowing my mind now.
Yeah, I know. Crazy.
But I like there was a very like when you're in that answer, there's a bit of a similarity to an experience that I had with this film, to where she was literally putting the tampon in the mason jar of piss, to which I said, gross, and she immediately responded, periods aren't gross. And it was the strangest fucking interaction I've ever had with a filmmaker.
So there's a tweet that I want to bring up. Sarah Valenti.
Please do.
Once said, some of you have never changed your drunk girlfriend's tampon, and it shows. And I want to say I was married for almost... I was in a long-term relationship and married for almost 10 years. And I never once had to change my wife's tampon. And I can't even begin to understand the problem that would have arisen where I would have had to. I could maybe understand the situation where I would have to remove it myself. But having to replace it seems like a problem of a very specific color that I have up until now not been prepared to cross. And I think that's what the mason jar full of urine and a pad is about, because it's saying, y'all men want to say that you want these independent, sexually unique women who are on their own and don't need anything other than yourself. And I'm telling you right now, if you met a woman who actually treated you like that, you'd be like, but why are you leaving? No, but I like the sex that we had tonight.
Those are also...
Can you stay?
Those are also women who don't need you.
Mm-hmm.
Like having you is a perk.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that there is also a very healthy message that is going around now that says, hey, your relationship is not what defines you.
Mm-hmm.
And your relationship is not even 50% of who you are as a person. Because, like, I love my fiance. I love her to fucking death. Like, would do just about anything for her. However, you know, we have been together for, I want to say, going on close to 3 years. There's still 30 years of my life where she was not there.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot more of me that she was not a part of, though she has come to really define what I'm going for now in my life. There's still a lot of what made me me.
Mm-hmm. And
I would say the same thing would go for a woman in a relationship. Her relationship to that man is not who she is. The person that you are currently fucking and currently in a tax contract with does not necessarily make you the person that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that and looking back at this, I do see that as being a big part of the message with this film. I think where we differ in terms of the opinion was in how it was brought across. I think, to me, it was almost too subtle. I don't know if that's the word I want to use, but there were some things where it's just like going in, I expected something completely different than what it was. I had a filmmaker hat on, but it was the wrong filmmaker hat.
To me, this movie is... Okay, so... To get personal for a moment here, we all... Well, at least I grew up watching bad romantic comedies. I was born in 1981. God help us all.
Oh,
yes.
boy.
Yeah, I graduated high school in the
Make me feel
previous
like a baby.
century. Yes, no, to make everyone feel like a baby. And as a result, I watched a lot of really bad romantic comedies that taught me that if you really liked somebody, that you should make a big, broad romantic gesture. So I, for sure, my junior year of high school, wrote like a multi-page poem to a girl who I worked with at Party City, proclaiming my undying love to her that I left in an envelope at her door just one day. And yeah, that person never talked to me again after I dropped off that letter, because that's not how relationships work. And only in movies can you write like a gigantic poem and drop it off at someone's house. And unless you're goddamn Shakespeare or William Faulkner or something, you are
Even then, I'm sure William Faulkner was thought of as a creeper when he did that to some other
totally.
woman.
You'd have to
because at that point, he wasn't William Faulkner to everyone.
It's
He
not
was
one in
just
a million.
some fucking creep.
Impressing a woman with a poem is not a 1 in a million. It's not 1 in a billion. It's a 1 in a trillion chance.
Also,
and just a reminder: if you're 1 in a billion on this planet, there's 7 people on the planet just like you. You're not unique. If you're 1 in a million, there's like 7,500 people on the planet just like you. It's not impressive.
Also, men, I'm going to give you a giant note. Don't ask a woman out or don't hit on her when she is at her job.
Oh, no, especially if it's in a restaurant.
She is not allowed to leave. Mm-hmm. And so, once again, you hold the control. And this is coming from someone who has done that. And I'm telling you right now that that's not fucking work. And in fact, it is really creepy. And it just doesn't... It's... Yeah, so
don't be that guy.
Yeah, don't be that guy. But it's coming back to the film. But it's the film... Looking back on it and seeing your opinion, it does, I completely understand.
The Love Witch is the movie for a woman who is trying to play by the rules of the patriarchy and saying, "Girl, it's not going to end up working that way." It's the opposite of the romantic comedies that I grew up with. That all told me that if you write the big poem, the girl's going to be like, "Oh."
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen. She's going to be creeped out because you're just some rando who wrote this big-ass poem. If you kind of like a girl from work, do not buy her a $300 diamond ring and just bring it to her because it's Sweetest Day or whatever. It seems like that you are trying to buy her affections. It's weird. It's not going to work.
It is nice to see that a lot more of modern film and television is sort of straying away from that.
Well, it helps when we give, there's a reason that it's a woman writing, directing, producing, editing, composing, costume designing, and art directing. Okay. Because when you have, it's particularly when it's one woman who's like, no, this is the message. Bro, that's the message.
So I guess this film is one great big giant letter to Hollywood saying, please let more of us do these movies. Mm-hmm. Because the way that you've been doing them is not the reality of what it really is. Also, fuck you.
Also, and just as a shout out, because I'm a cinematographer, I got to do this. So David Mullen is the cinematographer on this, who did...
Yeah, tell me more about David Mullen.
So you would know David Mullen as the dude who shot all of Marvelous Miss Maisel.
Shut the front door, really?
Absolutely, yeah. He also shot pretty much all of Big Love, all of United States of Terror. He shot Jennifer's Body, Akeelah and the Bee. He's been a really, really great worksman cinematographer, and he also shot The Dentist 2. Brace yourself. which stars Corbin Which stars Corbin Burnson. Hi, Corbin. We worked together on a movie once, but yes, The Dentist 2. Brace yourself. Is
oh my god!
One of the best taglines.
Horror
of all time.
movies have the best taglines that no other genre can really. Maybe romantic movies and romantic comedies.
Nothing comes close to horror.
But nothing comes close to horror taglines.
Nothing
Just
close.
the best.
Absolutely incredible.
David,
do you have anything else to say about The Love Witch?
I suppose maybe talk. Do we have time to talk a little bit about the performances?
Yeah, absolutely. We can. We can have that.
Because I am wondering about this because the performances are very much in the territory of camp. I feel like that is definitely on purpose.
100%.
It is difficult for me to judge the performances in this movie based on the performances themselves because I've never really seen them in anything else. But I will say some of the standouts. Strangely enough, the first one was the Jester, and his in the makeup he actually did really well. Mm-hmm. In this, he's barely in the movie, but he looks like he belongs on a Broadway stage. It looks like he belongs in Cats.
Okay.
If anything, I think he would appreciate that more than anybody.
Mm-hmm. This is a Cats appreciation podcast for sure.
Oh yeah. I got to give a big shout out to Jeffrey Vincent. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. Paris or Paris or Paris?
One of the two.
One of the two. But I'm giving him a shout out because he's an Indianapolis boy, and being somebody who is from Indianapolis as well. Buddy, it's nice to meet somebody from the old stomping grounds. If you're listening to this, hi.
He's also the guru in the very last episode of Mad Men, so you can look out for him there.
That is great. Trish Laura Waddell, I thought she did very well. Or Laura Waddell, who played Trish. Mm-hmm. I thought did very well in the type that she was playing. Once again, I also got to like give a big shout out to the actor who played Griff, whose jaw could cut glass.
Oh, his jaw is unbelievably impressive.
It was interesting because a lot of the performances that I see are a lot of the performances that I've also worked with that weren't necessarily on purpose. So, like, it does take if you are very skilled at acting, it takes a bit of skill to play campy.
Oh yeah, no, playing camp is one of those.
So if that is in fact on purpose, it's done well.
Oh no, absolutely. Anna Biller says on the commentary track that working with Jeffrey Vincent, like he was incredible that he was able to do like everything as scripted, exactly as it was, and even times when like on set she'd look at his performance and be like, that might have been like a step too far. She's like, as soon as I got into the editing room, I was like, oh no, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Like he was just one of those dudes who's just like, who just solid doubles the whole way around. Like he doesn't hit home runs, but like every time he gets up to bat, just a solid double.
Well, all of the men in this film have a very character actor look to them.
True.
And so when Jeffrey pops up, playing Wayne, the teacher, he's like, oh, the first actually naturally handsome actor. And then he begins talking. And I go, I'm not sure if I like this. I feel very uncomfortable. And the fact that is on purpose is very impressive. So now, like, realizing that, because I was looking through this, I'm like, how do I critique these performances? Having done this myself for quite a while. But yeah, so I think there's definitely an art form to playing camp. Mm-hmm. And it's something that very, like, it's kind of like you were telling me earlier, you can't fake. It's very difficult to fake camp.
Yeah, most of the time, camp cannot be made; it can only be found. Yeah. And this is one of the few cases I think where camp was genuinely made. Like to me, it's up there with like John Waters as one of those like no. There's like 3 or 4 people who get this, and the rest of you are just doing crap that's occasionally funny. But this is.
You think you're coming off a certain way, but are you really okay with making people all uncomfortable?
Yes.
No, exactly. I will say, like, speaking of uncomfortable, Kyle Derrick, who played Lyle, the husband, Trish's husband, who killed himself, very character act. Like again, you got a lot of character actors in this. I think he did a very good job considering all the things that he had to, all the weird angles and all the just the intense emotions and over the top emotions that he had to play. I think. The performances, when you look back at it, seeing what they were trying to do, I think the performances can be really good. Mm-hmm. But once again, you have to understand that that's what they are going for.
Yes.
If you don't understand that, you are going to think this movie is a piece of shit. Which is pretty much like that's sort of the where I was coming up on for this film. Is I did not like it when I finished it. I can appreciate it a lot more now that it's being. Now that I have the context. I think when you have the context, you can really appreciate the film. I wish the film was a little better at giving you the context.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
And so, and I think the filmmaker, she's even come forward saying that she's frustrated that people didn't understand it. Mm-hmm. At that point, I would also say, context.
Yeah.
And this is where art has a niche. And I think this is why you don't have a lot of people who go to the art museum because they don't want to they don't want to be introspective.
Or particularly the modern art museum.
Yeah, the modern art museum. So they really like there's like when you pop a movie on Amazon Prime, on Shudder, you're just going to you just want to watch something. You want to watch a movie. I don't think you quite expect to get deep. And so
there's a reason people put on Friday the 13th 5 because like they're like, so is Jason and he kills teenagers? Cool. That's the exact amount of information. Horror that is how much I want to engage right now.
And again, that is the beauty of horror. Is the horror genre can be very simple. It can be so simple, the simplest of simple. But sometimes it can be the most mind-blowing experience you have ever fucking encountered.
It can be the most basic
movie. Question your own existence.
It can be the most basic movie or flick in the world, and also at the same time, horror can be absolutely the best that cinema can offer. And it just kind of depends on how the filmmaker was feeling.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that about wraps up pretty much my questions and feelings on this. Ken, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. The only other thing that I want to say is Samantha Robinson, please, at any moment, please come and step on me. Other than that, I think
she has permission to ruin your life.
Absolutely, Samantha Robinson, please come ruin my life at any moment. Until then, until such time as Samantha Robinson comes and ruins my life, I think it's time for us to choose the movie that we're going to watch next week, and we are going to do something a little exciting, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to have ourselves a Freaky Friday. What's a Freaky Friday, you ask?
Ken, please do explain
a Freaky Friday is where instead of Ken does all the research and explains to David why he should like a movie that David doesn't like, instead, David's going to suggest a movie to me, 2 movies to me that I haven't seen, and then I'm going to see a movie, and then next week David has to do all the work. So I'm very excited for this Freaky Friday. So David, what are the 2 movies we're going to be looking at the trailer for? Okay.
Well, Ken, both movies can, of course, be found on Shudder. The first movie is the South Korean thriller called The Wailing.
Ooh, okay.
I once again highly recommend this to everybody. It's a long one, but if you sit through it, it's a fucking gem. The other one that I would also highly recommend, and they've even posted on my own Instagram, saying, please, for the love of God, somebody watch this movie because I think it's fascinating, is... there are dogs.
Yes, there are dogs in the hallway. Let's fix this
up. So many dogs. We'll fix it in post. Or
Indeed.
maybe we won't. Maybe it's just part of this podcast charm.
Yes, no, it's terrible.
Anyway,
go on.
Don't let that diminish the next movie that I'm going to suggest to you, because this one is an Argentinian gem called Terrified.
Ooh.
And it is on Shudder. And it is just... It plays with horror and camera.
All right. Well,
not necessarily that the horror is in the camera. It's all in the angles, baby.
All right. Well, then let's travel in time before the dogs get us. You ready? All right. Well, we're back from the future, and I've seen 2 trailers.
Oh man, it is not pretty. Oh, I don't want to tell you who wins the election, but
it's Hitler.
It doesn't. It doesn't end how you expect.
It comes back from the dead.
Biden wins.
JFK Jr.
But turns out he's not really Biden.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, JFK Jr. runs as an independent with Hitler as his running mate, and they win in a landslide.
Fucking wild.
It turns out Q was right. Who knows? But here's the weirdest thing. Q ends up being Q the Winged Serpent from the fucking Larry Cohen movie.
Blew my goddamn mind.
Yeah.
Really nice guy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no.
Paid for our drinks.
Yeah, no. Quetzalcoatl, one of the nicest dragons you'll ever meet. And also part of the deep state. Fascinating stuff from the future. Anyway, of the 2 movies, I'm going to go ahead and say, David, next week, for our Freaky Friday, we're going to be watching The Wailing.
Yes!
Little South Korea representation.
I would have said the yes to either one of them. But God, it's such a fun
Well, it's good to know that you like both of the movies that you recommended to me, and one wasn't a pile of crap.
Yeah. No. Ken, only the best for you, buddy.
Fantastic. Well, David?
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
No, absolutely. Nobody puts baby in a corner unless it's Ken as a gaffer, in which case I will put that baby up on a C-stand and I will put that absolutely in a corner and bounce it right into the ceiling.
Oh, Ken.
David, do you have any pluggables?
I do have pluggables. Once again, I'm always gonna pitch the wonderful film that I made with a bunch of super chill independent filmmakers. Serena Waits, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime. Feel free to check that out, and feel free to at me if it's not something you enjoyed. I don't care, whatever. We did it. We shot a feature in fucking 3 days.
Well, there you go.
Goddamn wild.
Hell yeah. And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ken Stachnik, STACHNIK. You can find my witchy friend Chloe at Mouthy Goddess at both Instagram and on the Twitters. She's a massage therapist working here in LA, and she also does energy work and spell work. So if you need your bits and pieces rubbed, and you need some spell work, and you need a little Reiki done, you need some energy clean, hit up my friend Chloe. She is a fantastic witch. And then also
check out Benjamin Moy.
Absolutely.
Over at Hooked on Score, his podcast. So check out Benjamin Moy's podcast, Hooked on Score, who is responsible for our podcast theme. And feel free to check me out on Instagram at _DW Marlowe. That's MARLOWE.
And until next week, Internet, we will see you Actually, we won't see you because that's not how podcasts work. You will hear us, and we won't hear you unless you, I guess, tweet us, in which case we will read what you said, which isn't quite hearing. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends on all ends of the spectrum, and our non-binary friends, folks, and wonderful people listening, good night, good luck, and I hope to see you next week.
We love you.